Hi, this is Meredith Elliott Powell, and I am here today with another edition of Thriving in Uncertainty, the broadcast where we talk to the leaders, the influencers, those people who are really telling us what it takes to really make this marketplace start working for them. I am super excited to have Amy Franko with me today. She is a sales expert, true guru in the area, and the author of The Modern Seller. Welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me here. I think we worked out some uncertainty before getting into this broadcast.
We had a few kinks with sound and things like that. But Amy, give us a little bit of background about you. Tell us a little bit about you and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So the Cliff Notes version of my background is that the first 10 years of my career I spent in technology. I worked for companies like IBM and Lenovo, all in client-facing roles, in sales roles. And then I took a big pivot into entrepreneurship 14 years ago and started a learning and development company. And what that looks like today is I work with sales organizations, primarily in professional services, technology, mid-market organizations, and I help them grow through sales strategy and through sales skill development. So that's where I get to spend my time with sales leaders, sales professionals, and really helping organizations grow. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, Lauren Starr just chimed in and said it. The Modern Seller is a great book. So we do want to get a plug in there. So the premise of this show is really all about thriving in uncertainty, what it takes to really thrive in today's marketplace. So when I say the word uncertainty to you, what pops into your mind?
The first word that pops into my mind is agility. And maybe it's because I've been talking about it for most of this week with clients and at events, but agility pops into my mind as soon as you said the word uncertainty.
Huh. So as you talked about, working with clients and working with organizations, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see that they're facing?
Well, I mean, right now, world events notwithstanding, just major disruption is what all of my clients and prospective clients are facing. And because they're being faced with a disruption that we've never really seen before, it is causing huge amounts of uncertainty and causing people to have to make decisions and pivot, especially without all the information. And the information keeps changing, right? So they are really tasked with having to not only manage their own emotions with everything that's going on right now, but they're having to lead teams and they're having to lead an organization to success despite everything that's happening out there. I'd say that's the number one thing that I'm seeing and hearing.
Are you seeing that most people are adapting to the uncertainty well, or seem to be challenged by it? Kind of what are sort of the modes you see out there?
Yeah, so I think it's been kind of phased, if you will. Back in, February, March, April, I think there was this like December through February where it's like, oh, this maybe something will happen with all of this, but who knows? I actually took a trip and I was in Africa for 2.5 weeks in February, and I think you and I talked about this. And not 10 days after we got back, we were so fortunate. Not 10 days after we got back, the whole world just turned upside down, at least here in the States. It had been turning upside down globally. So for any of our global friends that might be listening in, you were definitely experiencing this before we were. But I think the uncertainty came in waves or stages. There's that stage where you're just trying to figure out which end is up, whether you're a seller or a sales leader or a leader in another part of the organization, just keeping your head above water and figuring out what just happened. Revenue streams dried up overnight. Clients not being able to do business the way that they are used to doing business. So it's just that figuring out which end is up. And then I would say there's a second phase of it where it's like, all right, we know that we're sitting in the midst of this uncertainty. We know it's going to be a while. There's something that comes with understanding these aren't going to be quick fixes. We're going to be here for a while, so we got to settle in and we have to figure out how to pivot. So there seemed to be this settling or this normalization, if you will, where it's like, all right, we've got to get back down to business, even though all of this stuff is happening around us. Personal lives, home lives being upended, business still being upended. But this acceptance and then figuring out, all right, how do we keep moving forward?
So when you go in and you work with organizations and you work with leaders, what are their biggest questions right now? What are they leaning on you to help them figure out?
Yeah, so I'm thinking about a couple of clients right now, and they run the gamut. I have a manufacturing client right now. Even though I work a lot in professional services and tech, there's still a lot of difference. Those are broad spectrums, so lots of different experiences. But I would say the common theme is we have to navigate our way forward even though we don't know what's going to be around the corner. So
Right.
they're mostly looking for help and guidance to look at the next 6 months to a year. They're not looking out beyond that. So I would say that that's a common theme, is that this short-term view, we got to be able to look out maybe 6 months to a year. And I'd say, interestingly enough, that the second theme, and this makes me happy to hear it, is that we still have to invest in people and we still have to build their skills. And I would say especially selling skills. So those are probably two things that I'm hearing specific to the world that I sit in with sales leaders and sales professionals.
Yeah. So how is I feel like sales has been one of the biggest things that's been impacted because it's funny as sales professionals, I don't know what it is, but we have remained traditional for the most part. I mean, we kind of do this the way that we've done it since, I started selling, gosh, in the 1980s. And we pretty much face to face, we network with people, we build those relationships, we take people to lunch, and COVID sort of blew all that up. And and as salespeople try to make the transition now, what is some of the best advice that you have for them? Then I want to dive in and I want to unpack a little bit of the modern seller.
Yeah. So your comments about the traditional ways of doing things. I have a professional services client and their chief marketing officer who just nailed this so well. And I just have to give him credit for this statement. He said, our go-to moves are gone. we don't have our go-to moves. So going to events, going to conferences, taking people to lunch, the things that we are just so used to doing, we don't have.
Yes.
And
right.
so now you've got to completely rethink the way that you are engaging with your prospects and your clients. I have clients that are, I wouldn't want to say completely re-engineering, but they are looking at their sales process, and anything that was done in person, they're having to get creative and figure out ways to build those relationships and move those opportunities forward in a completely virtual environment. So I would say that that's one thing that I'm seeing. They're re-engineering their sales process to a degree, and they're having to master things virtually when they didn't have to before. It was an option before. Now it's a requirement.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I think that we're stubborn to change because we kind of haven't had to change really. And COVID showed up and really disrupted that. The biggest challenge when I talk to sales professionals that I find that they have, the biggest challenge they have is prospecting. So what tips are you giving to people to prospect in a virtual world?
Yeah, so I'll share some of the things that I'm doing right now, and also share a couple things that I'm seeing clients do successfully. Probably the first thing that I did, and the first thing that I've recommended to my clients, is you really have to get brutally honest with your pipeline. It is sometimes hard and painful to do that, and especially right now. You've got to look at every deal and just very honestly assess, is this a stuck deal? Does this have any chance of moving forward in the next 6 months? Or is this something that is going to move forward because the investments have already been made? We've got momentum. So really brutal honesty with your pipeline, because that's going to tell you where to spend your time. But in terms of the prospecting, what I've been successful with is researching trends, really doing my homework on either the industry or the clients that I want to be reaching out to, and framing up all of my outreach very personally, whether it's an email, or it is the use of video in email, or it's a phone call. Talking to business leaders and sales leaders about trends and how it's impacting their business has been very successful for me in earning 20 minutes or 30 minutes with a leader. And looking into the future for planning, as much as we talk about only looking forward for a year, people are interested in what are other people doing successfully to plan. So those are some things that have been helpful for me. I have a couple of clients who have really looked to master. They're in a world where they're demoing either product or software. They have had to master the virtual demo because they absolutely have to be selling their product, but they can't do it in the way that they were doing it before. So that's a mastery that I am seeing some clients having to focus on in their process.
What do you think is next? Do you think that this is here to stay? What trends are you seeing that will stick? What trends are you seeing that will probably go away?
Yeah, so let's start with the ones that I think are going to stick. I've been doing some of my own independent research, and there was some good research from the conference board, and they were talking about they had surveyed somewhere around like 1,300 leaders worldwide on what are they seeing changing into the future, and there were two things that really came about. The first trend was really reimagining their business, having to reimagine their business, having to reimagine revenue streams. And then secondly, the digital transformation just being completely accelerated. I feel like we've been talking about digital transformation for a decade.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden it's on us. If you haven't been down the road with digital transformation, you are either stuck because you haven't been down the road, or if you are partially down the road, you just got pushed. You just got pushed by a bulldozer, having to go further down the road and faster than ever before. Those are some kind of macro trends. I would say from more of a sales professional, sales leadership standpoint, thinking about how these trends are impacting our clients, really having to look outward and not just inward. And then virtual hybrid environments. Virtual environment's going to be here all year for the rest of this year, which is almost over. We're going into 2021. It's going to be here for at least the first half of next year, where we're going to have to operate in these virtual environments. So I think that the part of that that's going to be here to stay is that the skills that you're building right now to master virtual selling, those are going to stay with you. We're going to stay in hybrid environments, I think, for a good chunk of the foreseeable future. So the virtual skills you're building right now, they're not temporary. These are things that'll be in your toolkit for a long time and here to stay.
Yeah. I think that I do think that, I think that we are going to want to get back together in person. We're going to want to see some people, but I think this virtual piece is always going to be there. Last week I did my first live presentation. I hadn't spoken live in 183 days.
I remember you had told me about that. How was it?
And it was a hybrid event. And I probably had about 20 people in person, and they had the rest online. It was beautifully done. But I thought this is really here to stay. I mean, I think that conferences and associations are gonna realize that now they can really reach members around the world, that this is truly an engaging opportunity. And I'm kind of amazed at how little we can rest on our laurels. Like what I was doing in March wasn't good enough to be doing in June, isn't good enough to be doing in September. And now I'm even looking at the ways I need to change up my home studio and the things that I'm doing to engage audiences, come November and December. So it is definitely a time that the disruption is propelling us and moving us forward. Tell us a little bit about the modern seller. Now, I think it's kind of fascinating that you wrote this before the pandemic, and I imagine that you didn't see the pandemic coming. But having read the book, I know it's still really, really relevant. Kind of give us the highlights and really the things that sales professionals need to focus on today to be considered modern.
Yeah, so it's hard to believe that book launched. It'll be 2 years next month, and I was just having this conversation with someone else that the skills and the concepts in that book are more relevant today than probably even 2 years ago. And now I wish I had my COVID crystal ball out a couple of years ago. I had no idea that was coming down the pike. But the idea around the modern seller is the catalyst anyway, was that I was seeing with my clients and prospects, the sellers and sales leaders that were really, really successful. they weren't just good at the everyday sales activities of prospecting, presenting, negotiating, closing, all that stuff. They had some foundational skills behind the scenes, the skills behind the skills, if you will. And I wanted to dig into that. I really hadn't seen that type of approach in the marketplace. And being a learning and development person, I wanted to dig into what are the skills behind the skills that sellers and sales leaders need to be successful. And I also wanted this to be a field guide, not research-based, but not just theory. It had to be really practical. So it's full of practical ideas and strategies to help you put these concepts into practice. But there are 5. So a modern seller is agile, entrepreneurial, holistic, social, and an ambassador. If you build these in yourself or in your teams, you will be better at all the other selling activities that you have to be doing.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Amy, this has been fantastic having you with us today. Tell our audience how they find out more about you, and most importantly, how they find the book and maybe what you're up to next.
Yeah, so I'll start with what I'm up to next, and then I'll close with how we can connect. So what I'm up to next is my signature program. Our signature program here is strategic selling. And that has traditionally been a in-person delivery, if you will, with some technology components. We have completely re-engineered that program to be delivered in a fully digital environment. So that has been my pandemic initiative, if you will, is that re-engineering of that program. And that is going to be launching in October. And that's ideal for anyone who's in professional services or anyone who is in a complex sale. It teaches a key business development framework and then specific skills to help you succeed in that framework and with your clients. So that's launching in October. That's what I'm up to. And if you want to connect and learn more either about that program or you want to connect with me, the best way is amyfranko.com.
Thanks. So, Amy, it's been great having you here today. And everybody, please remember, tune in every week. We'll be doing multiple interviews like this, really talking to the leaders and the influencers and helping you learn what you need to know, all the tips and secrets that you need to thrive in an uncertain marketplace. So have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.